The canned food aisle looks like savings. It isn't. 9 brands in your pantry right now are wearing a Canadian label that stopped being true years ago. One settled an SEC fraud case. One is owned by Mitsubishi. One stopped being made in Canada in 2019 and never told you. One filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy last July and got auctioned off in 3 pieces. One was built by German Jewish refugees on a Scarborough farm and hasn't been made in this country since 2011. And the 2 brands that actually earned a spot in your kitchen, one costs less than great value. The other has been Ontario-owned since 1917. The label is a feeling. The ownership is the fact. Feelings are not regulated. Facts are. Drop a comment with the brand you buy most often. I want to see how many of these are sitting in your pantry right now. Let's go. Number 9. Great value. Flip the can. Look for the manufacturer. You won't find one. That is not an oversight. That is the entire business model. Walmart sets a cost target. A contractor fills the can. Next quarter, it could be a different contractor, different province, different equipment. Nobody's name is on it. Nobody is accountable for it. If something goes wrong, a recall, a contamination, a formulation change, the label gives you no way to trace it back. Flip the can again. Glucose fructose. What Canadian regulators allow high fructose corn syrup to be called on a Canadian label. Same substance, cleaner name, modified cornstarch, sodium systems, color where color shouldn't need to be. A 2018 study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition linked regular consumption of high fructose corn syrup to metabolic syndrome in adults, elevated triglycerides, insulin resistance, and higher cardiovascular risk across multiple daily servings. The EU requires private label manufacturers to be named on the package. That is not a guideline. That is a regulation. Canada does not. Health Canada also permits the glucose-fructose wording that obscures what the sweetener actually is. 2 separate regulatory gaps. Walmart lives in both at once, and the gap is the whole product. Walmart Canada operates over 400 stores across the country. Great Value is the largest volume private label line on those shelves. That is enormous scale. A brand that moves that much volume with no disclosed manufacturer is not an accident of retail history. It is a deliberate structural choice, one that lets Walmart change suppliers without ever telling you, and lets suppliers operate without the accountability that comes with being named. The savings are real. The manufacturer is not. You are saving $1 by buying from nobody. The next brand has a name on the label, a famous one. That is somehow worse. Number 8. Heinz. Start in 2019. That year, Kraft Heinz disclosed that the United States Securities and Exchange Commission had been investigating them for accounting misconduct. The finding? Falsified supplier contracts, inflated earnings, deliberately misled investors about the company's financial position. The violations covered 2015 through 2018. The company settled. Executives moved on. The can stayed on the shelf. Now, work backward. The accounting fraud was committed by Kraft Heinz, formed in 2015 when Heinz merged with Kraft Foods. Heinz itself had been taken private in 2013 by Berkshire Hathaway and a Brazilian private equity firm called 3G Capital, $28 billion deal. And within a year of that deal, the Leamington, Ontario plant, operating since 1909, closed. 340 jobs, gone. A Canadian town's food manufacturing economy dismantled to service a private equity return on a Pittsburgh timeline. That is the sequence. Plant closure, accounting fraud, SEC settlement. Same corporation, same decade. Now open a can of the baked beans. Over 20 grams of sugar, glucose fructose, modified cornstarch, color. For most Canadians, beans are a protein move. A healthier choice? A pantry staple they reach for because their parents reached for it. 20 grams of added sugar turns a protein source into something closer to a dessert. The EU requires added sugar warning labels on products at that threshold. Canada does not. Your grandmother trusted this label. The company that earned that trust does not exist anymore. What exists is a holding company that closed the Canadian plant and got caught falsifying its books. Trust is real. The company behind the trust is not. And Heinz at least tells you where it was made. The next brand stopped doing even that. Number 7. Campbell's. Pick up a can of Campbell's condensed soup. The front says Campbell's Canada. Now look for where it was made. It's not on there. Because the Etobicoke plant is closed, production shifted to the United States. The can still says Campbell's Canada. The can does not say product of USA, and the CFIA does not require it to. Canadian shoppers pay a loyalty premium for domestic production. There is purchasing data proving this. Campbell's figured out they could keep the loyalty and ditch the production. Same shelf, same trust, lower cost. In the EU, that labeling wouldn't last a week. Country of origin disclosure is required for exactly this reason. In Canada, it's legal. Campbell's, renamed the Campbell Company in 2024, now runs Habitant, Pace, Pepperidge Farm, and Goldfish from a corporate headquarters in Camden, New Jersey. The Etobicoke plant had been operating since 1931, nearly 90 years of Canadian food manufacturing, gone to shift work to facilities across the border. And the sodium. A single bowl of Campbell's condensed soup, prepared as directed on the back of the can, delivers close to half the daily sodium the World Health Organization recommends for an adult. Not the upper limit, the recommendation. For an entire day, in one bowl, Health Canada's own sodium reduction strategy names canned soup as one of the highest risk categories in the Canadian diet. A 2017 study in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology linked regular high sodium consumption to elevated hypertension and stroke risk. Their own government, their own data, saying it out loud. The can says nothing. The red and white is real. The Canada is not. And the brand Campbell's bought in 1989 is the reason this gets personal. Number 6. Habitant. 1918. Outremont, Quebec. A grocery and butcher shop owned by a man named Fidus Morin. His daughter, Marie Blanche, cooks the first batch of pea soup using her mother Roseanne Couture's recipe, yellow peas. Pork fat, a specific blend of savory spices she had worked out over years. Fidus cans the first batches and gives free samples to his salespeople. The product spreads across Quebec, then across Canada, becomes an actual cultural institution. A tin of Habitant pea soup is not just food in Quebec, it is memory, it is grandparents, it is winter. Catelli buys the brand in 1954, Ogilvy in 1958, Labatt in 1968, Campbell's in 1989. Then, January 2018, Campbell's announces the Etobicoke plant is closing. By mid-2019, production ends. Habitant, born in an Outremont grocery store using a Quebec family recipe, is now manufactured in the United States. 18 million cans a year in Canada, 10 million in Quebec alone. Quebec families buying Habitant as an act of provincial pride. Grandparents serving it to grandchildren because it's what their parents served them. Nobody checking the back of the can because nobody ever had to. The provincial pride is made in New Jersey. The recipe is real. The Quebec is not. And if you think that's the worst cross-border heritage swap on this list, wait until you see what happened to a pickle brand built by Holocaust survivors. Number 5. Bix. 1939. A German Jewish family named Bick escapes the start of the Holocaust by posing as Christian farmers. They are neither Christian nor farmers. It is the only paperwork that will get them into Canada. They land in Toronto and buy a 160-acre farm next to what is now Scarborough Town Centre. 1944. A humid summer produces a glut of cucumbers on the Bick farm. George Bick pulls out his mother's pickle recipe from Holland, barrels in the barn, selling to restaurants and army camps. By 1951, the family is packing glass jars, 60,000 by hand in the first year. By 1960, they're producing 12 million jars annually. By the late 1960s, Bix is the dominant pickle brand in Canada, and the red and green logo is in nearly every Canadian fridge. The family sells to Robin Hood Flour in 1966. Robin Hood gets bought by International Multifoods. International Multifoods gets bought by J.M. Smucker in 2004. September 2010. Smucker announces both Canadian Bix plants, Delhi, Ontario, and Dunnville, Ontario, will close at the end of the 2011 growing season. 150 factory jobs, over 1,000 seasonal farm jobs, gone. The reasoning given publicly is manufacturing flexibility. The actual move is production to a Smucker plant in Ripon, Wisconsin. Bix has not been made in Canada since 2011. 2023. Smucker sells the Bix brand, along with Habitant pickled beets, Woodman's horseradish, and McLaren's pickled onions, to Treehouse Foods, an Illinois private label manufacturer, for about $20 million US. The jar still carries the red and green logo Canadian shoppers grew up with. It's imported from the United States and marketed from a Markham, Ontario head office. Here is the part that tells you everything. Treehouse still sources a portion of its cucumbers from Canadian growers. Those cucumbers cross the border into the United States, get pickled at a Wisconsin plant, and come back to Canada as Bix. A Scarborough refugee family's pickle business, built on a Holland recipe, now exists as a supply chain loop that treats Canada as a raw material supplier and an end market, with none of the processing that made the brand the brand. When the recent tariff dispute hit, some Canadian grocers began delisting Bix entirely. Sobeys started replacing it with private label pickles sourced from other countries. The result is a pickle aisle that is somehow even less Canadian than it was, because the brand that was supposed to represent Canadian pickling has been a U.S. logistics arrangement for over a decade. The logo is real, the pickle business is not, and the next brand pulled the same trick on the canned fruit aisle. Number 4. Del Monte. Del Monte is the name most Canadian kids grew up with on the fruit cocktail. The peaches, the pear halves, the corn, the peas. The label has been in Canadian pantries since before most shoppers were born. In 2018, French multinational Bonduelle acquired the rights to use the Del Monte label for canned fruits and vegetables in Canada and merged it into its Arctic Gardens portfolio. The branding stayed familiar. The operational footprint became European. Most Canadians never noticed the switch. The label didn't change, the shelf placement didn't change, and Bonduelle paid for the Del Monte name specifically because the familiarity was the asset. Then, July 2025, Del Monte Foods, the U.S. parent, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection after 139 years in business. $912.5 million in debtor-in-possession financing to stay alive through the sale process. The brand got carved up in a three-way auction and split between 3 different bidders. This is not a story about one company running into trouble. This is a story about how the parent of a brand most Canadians still reach for by muscle memory became structurally insolvent, and the Canadian version of that brand had already been a Bonduelle licensing arrangement for 7 years before the bankruptcy hit. The company selling Del Monte in Canada and the company that went bankrupt called Del Monte in the United States are already 2 different entities, operating under the same branding, producing different products for different markets. Now, flip a Del Monte can and check the ingredients. The fruit cocktails contain pear juice concentrate plus added sugar. The corn carries sodium levels that put it in the same category as the mass market brands elsewhere on this list. The peas, sodium, sugar, and a modified formulation that bears no relation to what fresh peas actually contain. The label implies heritage. The ownership is a bankrupt U.S. parent and a French licensee. The product is an industrial formulation sold on the strength of a name that is no longer clear on who owns what. The name is real. The company behind the name is in 3 pieces. Number 3. President's Choice. I know what you're thinking. PC is supposed to be the good one. The brand that earned its reputation through taste tests and premium shelf placement. The brand people reach for when they want to spend $1 more and get something better. In some categories, that's accurate. In canned goods, it's not. PC canned beans, canned soups, canned vegetables sold across every Loblaws banner in the country. Loblaws, Real Canadian Superstore, No Frills, Fortinos, Zehrs, Valumart have no disclosed manufacturer on the packaging. Same contractor structure as Great Value. Different paint job. The formulation is governed by Loblaw's cost target, not a named producer's standards. The ingredient list proves it. Modified cornstarch, glucose fructose, color, sodium levels identical to the mass market brands sitting 2 shelves below at half the price. Run the test yourself. Next time you're at a Loblaws, pull a PC can and a no-name can of the same product. Read both labels side by side. Read the ingredients. Read the sodium per serving. Compare the price. The difference is almost entirely the box. Same beans, roughly $1 apart, sitting on the same shelf in the same store owned by the same company. The PC dollar is not buying you a better bean. It is buying you nicer packaging for the same bean, manufactured by the same undisclosed contractor working off the same Loblaws cost target. The Weston family's Loblaw companies generated over $60 billion in revenue last year. The contractor filling these cans remains unnamed. One of those 2 facts is easy to look up. The other is hidden by design, and that design is the point. The premium is real. The product is not. Number 2. Cloverleaf. There is a maple leaf on the can. It is a font choice. 2008, a London-based private equity firm called Lion Capital buys Cloverleaf. 2012, Prince's Group, a British food company majority owned by Mitsubishi Corporation of Japan, completes the acquisition. Every tuna sandwich in this country sends a portion of its price through a British subsidiary to a Japanese multinational's corporate structure in Tokyo. The maple leaf is a visual decision made by a marketing team to trigger Canadian loyalty in a grocery aisle. It is not a supply chain statement. That's the ownership. The regulatory gap is worse. Canned tuna in Canada is not required to disclose species, not required to disclose origin. Cloverleaf does not disclose either one. Across its entire canned seafood lineup, the species and the catch location are omitted. You don't know if you're eating albacore or skipjack. You don't know what ocean it came from. A 2020 study in environmental research confirmed that albacore carries significantly higher mercury than skipjack. Significantly. Health Canada's own guidance explicitly warns pregnant women and young children to limit albacore for exactly this reason. The neurological risk to fetal brain development is documented. The guidance exists on Health Canada's website, but Health Canada does not require the can to tell you which species is inside. So a pregnant woman trying to follow Health Canada's guidance cannot actually follow it when she picks up a cloverleaf can. The label refuses to tell her what she needs to know to make the decision her own government is telling her to make. The EU requires full species and origin labeling on canned fish. Canada does not. The maple leaf is real. The Canada is not. Before we get to number 1, and this one is the biggest nostalgia trick on the entire list, hit subscribe. The frozen pizza investigation is already filmed. One of the brands on that avoid list is in nearly every Canadian freezer in the country. You are going to want to see it. Now, number 1, Aylmer. Canning started in Aylmer, Ontario in 1882, 143 years ago, one of the oldest food manufacturing stories in the province. For generations of Canadian families, reaching for Aylmer meant reaching for local, for Canadian. For a brand you didn't have to think twice about, because your mother didn't think twice about it either. Aylmer is owned by Conagra Brands. Chicago, over $11 billion in annual revenue. Hunt's, Healthy Choice, Marie Callender's, Slim Jim, Pam. Aylmer is one line item in a portfolio of hundreds, managed from an American headquarters optimizing quarterly earnings. That alone would be a standard acquisition story. Chicago does not stop there. Walk into any Canadian grocery store and find the Aylmer shelf. Pick up a can of plain diced tomatoes. Read the ingredients. Tomatoes, citric acid, calcium chloride. 3 ingredients. Clean. The plain product is genuinely fine. Now pick up Aylmer Italian Seasoned, or the Chili Seasoned, or the Garlic. These are the cans that take up the most shelf space. Eye-level placement, recipe suggestions on the label, the cans moving the volume. Ingredients: modified cornstarch. Flavor systems: sodium 2 and 3 times higher than the plain can. A completely different product by every nutritional measure. But the packaging? Same red label, same font, same Ontario heritage imagery, same Aylmer name you trusted since childhood. No disclosure that anything has changed. 143 years of built Ontario nostalgia, used to sell you a Chicago industrial tomato mix that the original Aylmer cannery never made and wouldn't recognize. Every clean can on the shelf gives cover to every formulated can beside it. The heritage is real, the formulation is not. The brand uses the first to sell you the second. That's how you land at number 1 on this list, not by doing one thing worst, by using 143 years of Ontario trust as the delivery mechanism for a product Ontario never made, while every other brand on the list at least leaves you with plausible deniability about what you're buying. Aylmer. Ontario still exists. The brand hasn't been made there in a long time. Now the 2 worth your money. Recommended. Number 2. No Name. Same Loblaws. Completely different story. And I want to be clear about why this brand sits on the recommended list, while President's Choice sits on the avoid list, because those are both Loblaws brands, and the difference matters. President's Choice occupies a premium tier. It charges a premium price. It promises a premium product. In canned goods, it does not deliver one. No Name occupies the opposite tier. It charges the lowest price in the aisle. It promises nothing. And in canned goods, specifically in canned beans, chickpeas, lentils, and plain diced tomatoes, it delivers an honest product that most brands several dollars up the price ladder cannot match. No Name black beans. Black beans, water, salt. 3 ingredients. No Name chickpeas. Chickpeas, water, salt. 3 ingredients. No Name diced tomatoes. Tomatoes, tomato juice, citric acid, calcium chloride. 4 ingredients. No modified cornstarch, no glucose fructose, no color, no flavor systems, no added sugar. The bean is the product. The tomato is the product. Under $1.50 a can. Cheaper than great value at most locations. Significantly cleaner than the PC can sitting 6 inches above it on the same shelf. The yellow packaging has been telling the truth since 1978. It doesn't promise premium. It doesn't promise heritage. It doesn't promise craft. It promises the minimum viable, honest product at the lowest possible price. And in this aisle, the minimum viable, honest product is better than almost everything priced above it. The simplest can in the aisle is almost always the best one. Recommended. Number 1. Unico. One brand on this list is still Canadian-owned, still Ontario-processed, still doing what it started doing. Unico was founded in Toronto in 1917 by Edward Pasquale to bring Mediterranean pantry staples to Canadian immigrant communities. The beans, the tomatoes, the oils, the pastas people had grown up eating in Italy and couldn't find here. The brand built outward from that mission for over a century. Today, Unico is owned by Sunbright Foods, a family-owned Ontario cannery operating since 1973. Now, the largest largest independent canner in Canada and the largest tomato processor in the country. Not private equity, not a multinational, not a Chicago holding company. A family business running a cannery in Ruthven, Ontario, still packing beans and tomatoes and lentils for the same reason they started. Pick up a can of Unico white kidney beans. Read the ingredients. White kidney beans, water, salt, disodium EDTA, a Health Canada-approved sequestrant that holds texture. That's the entire list. No sugar, no starch, no glucose fructose, no color, no flavor enhancers. No heritage imagery covering an industrial formulation. $2 to $3 a can. Loblaws, Sobeys, Metro, IGA, already in your store. And here's the part the other brands on this list couldn't say if they tried. When Heinz closed the Leamington ketchup plant in 2014 and 340 jobs disappeared, Sunbright didn't fold. They stepped in. They launched Primo Ketchup. Built on the same Leamington region tomatoes Heinz walked away from, processed and packed at their Ruthven plant. The company that gave Canada Unico also became the largest tomato buyer in the country after Heinz left, quietly picking up the pieces of the supply chain the multinationals abandoned. 108 years of putting the same thing in the can. The heritage is real. The product is real. That is what it looks like when those two things match. 3 things next time you're in that aisle. First, look past the brand to the ownership. Great value is nobody. Heinz is a Pittsburgh holding company with a fraud settlement. Habitant is New Jersey. Bix is Illinois. Del Monte is bankrupt and split 3 ways. Aylmer is Chicago. Cloverleaf is Mitsubishi. President's Choice is an unnamed Loblaws contractor. The label is a feeling. The ownership is the fact. Second, count the ingredients after the main one. For canned beans, the main ingredient should be the bean. What comes next tells you whether you're holding a real product or a manufactured one. Water and salt is a real product. Glucose, fructose, and modified cornstarch is an industrial formulation wearing a pantry staple costume. Third, multiply the sodium by what you actually eat, not the serving size printed on the back. What actually ends up in the bowl. Health Canada has been clear on this for years. Canned soups, canned beans, canned vegetables are among the highest sodium categories in the Canadian diet. The serving size on the label is a regulatory construct. Your actual bowl is 2 or 3 of those servings. Do the real math. No name. Unico. Under $3. 3 to 4 ingredients. That is the whole framework. Go check your pantry tonight. Pull every can off the shelf. Read the ownership. Read the ingredients. Compare what's actually in your kitchen against what you thought was in your kitchen. Share this with someone in your life who still trusts every label they pick up. A parent, a grandparent, a friend doing their first real grocery run on their own. They deserve to know what you now know. And if this changed how you see the canned aisle, the frozen pizza investigation is next. One of those brands is in nearly every Canadian freezer right now. The ownership story is worse than anything you just saw. Don't miss it.